This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so Parsha this week is a little bit challenging, right? Because this Shabbos is Rosh Hashanah. So it's not going to be a regular Parsha Shavua. We'll only have the regular Parsha Shavua next week, right? And that will be Haazinu. And then we have Sukkot. And then we have Shmini Atzeret. And it's only on Simchas Torah that we'll do Vizot HaBracha and start Bereshit. So let's do a little bit on Haazinu this week. And then, but in order to really do Haazinu, let's double back to the end of Vayelech. Okay, so we're on page 1096 and Perek Lamed Aleph, chapter 31, Pasuk Tet Zayin, verse 16. Okay, now let's see that first verse. I'm going to pause a little bit, and I want you to finish the verse. I have to call in number one. I'm sorry, I just need to mute you. We're having a little bit
Oh,
of bounce back. Okay. Verse 16. Vayomer Hashem el Moshe. Hashem said to Moshe, Hincha shochev im avotecha. Let's stop right there. Don't look any further. Pause right there. No one look. You're going to now be laying with your fathers. You're about to die. Okay. You're God. And you're talking now to Moshe, your trusted servant, emissary, representative, and you're about to say, Moshe, you're about to die. Finish that sentence. What would you be saying to Moshe as God?
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thanks for all your hard work. Right? Moshe, it's been quite a ride. It's coming to an end, but it's been quite a journey. Thank you. You've been amazing. You have been unflagging in your advocacy for my children. What you have done for my children is overwhelming. Let's hear instead what Hashem has to say. V'kam ha'am hazeh, and this nation will arise, will step up, v'zana, and they will lust. How does the English put it? Stray, okay? Acharei Elohei nechar aretz. After the gods, the foreign gods of the land, asher hu ba shama, bikirbo, into the land, right? In whose midst it is coming. So Moshe, you've done everything to take them out of Egypt, to give them the Torah, to prepare them, to lead them through the desert. And then finally they're going to enter the land of Israel. Your dream will be realized. You won't be the one to bring them in, but your dream will be realized. The children of Israel will enter the land of Israel. And what's going to happen? They're going to stray and lust after foreign gods. The Azavani, and they're going to desert me. They feret briti, and they're going to break the covenant. Asher karati ito, that I made with them. V'chara api bo bayomahu, and I will be angered at them on that day. V'azavtim, and I will forsake them. V'histarti et panai mehem, I will hide my face from them. V'haya le'echol, and they'll be there for the eating. They'll become prey. Umatzauhu ra'ot rabot, and many evils, vitzarot, and tragedies will hit them. Sorry?
Came to be true.
Yeah. Not a very comforting words for Moshe. V'amar bayomahu, and they will say on that day, "Hello, al ki ein elokai b'kirbi mitzauni haraot ha'ela." They're going to say, "Oh, it's because God is not in my midst. That's why this has happened to me," which sounds somewhat positive, right? But yes and no, Cheryl.
Well, he's always been in their midst, and they haven't behaved any better.
Okay, Cheryl said he's always been in the midst, hasn't behaved any better. What else might be somewhat lacking? Right? We talk about an apology, it's not an apology. What else might be somewhat lacking in their saying, it's because God is not in my midst, that's why this has happened? Right? There's no accountability. Meaning the first part said they're going to stray after other gods, they're going to forsake me, they're going to annul the covenant, and then what's going to happen? I'll become angered and I'll hide my face from them. So they are lamenting the result of their actions as opposed to accountability for the actions that caused that result. Right? That's what's lacking over here, right? You hit me. Yes, perhaps I did. However, right? There needs to be some accountability. Yes, Cheryl.
But they're reverting back to exactly how they were before they even left Egypt. So maybe people just don't change.
Okay. Maybe people just don't change. Um, I would hate to say that going into Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Right? Tis the season, right? I would say that we do have certain ingrained tendencies which we might have to struggle with throughout our entire life, right? Certain things might never become easy to us, but I wouldn't say that we can never change. Right? Certainly the whole idea of Torah is meant to be transformative.
Well, that's a lot of very hard work. And
Yeah, it's a lot of very hard work. Yeah.
Interested in pursuing.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. Because even though this end of verse 17 might have had some indication that, oh, they're turning things around a little bit, but they're not, because they're not taking accountability. They're lamenting the result of their actions as opposed to their actions. Yes, Leah?
I read it a little differently. It's like it sounds like there's a regret there. Ki ein Elohai b'kirbi. They realize they lost faith, they lost the belief, and they say that. So to me, I don't see the blaming of God here. I see the blaming of themselves, maybe
Okay.
realizing.
Okay. Again, it's borderline, right? But they could have said, if that was it, they could have said, right, Azavnu et Elokai Bikir, right? It's only focusing on God's not amongst us, as opposed to, right, taking any accountability for, the first half. Va'anochi haster astir panai bayom hahu. And Hashem says to Moshe, right, it's getting worse. Because of this lack of accountability, haster astir, hide, I will hide. English will say, I will surely hide. I will surely conceal my face. Though, how did the Hasidim say it over here? Well, a Hasidic way of looking at things is always to try to find a positive little twist. Right? I will conceal my concealment. So, so it won't be quite as concealed. Okay, but the simple meaning certainly is Haster Astir Panai B'Yomahu. Al kol hara'ah, for all the evil asher asa they've done. Ki pana el Elohim acherim, they've turned to other gods. So this is quite a devastating report that God is giving to Moshe right before his death. Basically, everything that you've worked towards is going to seemingly go down the drain. Everything that you've dreamt, everything that you've wanted, right? Everything that you've put, right? You've put yourself out for them time and time again by the Meraglim, by Baal Peor, by the Egel, all of these different incidents where you were there advocating, no, right? And it's all going to go south over here. So why is God doing this? Why, imagine a person on their deathbed, right? And people come to visit and start complaining, right? And all the things that you did in your lifetime are just going to be dismantled, right? We would call that such a cruel act. That's what you're telling the person as they're about to leave this world? What do we say, guys?
You'd say that was pretty insensitive, but maybe it's like, wake up, you still have a chance with your last breath.
Pasuk 19. V'ata, and now, meaning, if there's no action item to follow, then it is incredibly insensitive and cruel. But if there is, and now, if there is something that you can do, then it will be an act of insensitivity and cruelty to just let it slide. To not give that action item as to how things can be, how the ship can be righted. And how will this be righted? V'ata now kitvu lachem et hashira hazot. Write this song. V'lamda, and teach it to Bnei Yisroel, to the children of Israel. Sima b'fiyem, place it in their mouths. Lamantia liashira hazot le'ed b'Bnei Yisrael. And that way, this will be as a testimony, right, against the children of Israel. And page 1098, Pasuk Chaf, I'll go right to the English. I shall bring to the land that swore to their forefathers, which flows with milk and honey. It'll eat, be sated, grow fat, turn to gods of others and serve them. It will provoke me and annul my covenant. And then Vayan will be Kitim Tsena Otora Otrabot, the Tzarot. When all of this befalls them, Va'anta Hashira Hazot Lefanav. This song then will be said over before them as a witness. Kilo Tishakach Mipi Zaro. Right? It will not be forgotten from the mouth of its offspring.
If that's the case, then Moses has just spent all this time admonishing them and don't do this, follow the Torah, the curses, the blessings, saying you'll be tempted to stray, don't do it. Then the song that's like, oh, you're going to do it anyway. Wouldn't that be
the song is meant to be somehow the antidote. Meaning, if and when this happens, and we stray, and all of this, the song will be the reminder to us to help get us back on track. That's what the song will do, and we'll need to see. That's our next parsha. I'm not going to say this Shabbos is parsha. Hello, Linda. Good to see you. Right, and we'll need to see how does that get us? What does this song do that hasn't been done so far in the Torah? That's really going to be the question we're going to try to focus on now. What does this song do that hasn't yet been done? That this is the action item. Moshe, we got to get this song released. We have to release this Haazinu song. It's got to hit the radio waves, become a number one, right? Top 40, right? But somehow this is going to be the antidote. This is what they'll need to hear during this long trek of history that is up ahead. So let's hear the song. Let's play that number. And keep in mind, just as a little introduction, what was the difference when we first left Egypt and we were thirsty? Moshe was told to do what with the rock? Strike. At first, strike the rock. Hit the rock, and the water will come out. At the end of the 40 years, upon the death of Miriam, and the water had stopped, then Moshe was told to speak to the rock. And oy vavoy, he hit the rock. And, at least according to the simple reading, therefore he cannot enter the land of Israel. He did not sanctify God's name as he was meant to. What's the difference between hitting the rock and speaking to the rock? Why was it initially that was the command to do, and at the end of the 40 years, that was a calamity? And why did that prevent Moshe from being the one to lead us into the land of Israel?
After 40 years,
Yeah.
supposed to have faith and seeing all
Okay.
God has done over those 40 years.
Okay.
And just
We should have had faith and seen what God had done after all those years, Jenny.
That was what I was thinking too.
Okay.
It was a different time.
A different time, a different state. Yes, Cheryl?
He was not doing what he was asked to do.
Yes, that's true. But the question is, well, why was he asked? Why was it good now? He was asked to do this initially, and then it was a calamity later on.
Well, because Hashem said to do it then, and he said something else later.
Okay, but why would Hashem change the command from, right? That's what we're trying to explore a little bit. Yes, Esther?
I would say maybe it's like when you're raising a child and a child is young and it can't really focus on the intricacies of, you should do this because if you don't do it, something bad will happen. Through, year and a half, 2-year-old child can't conceptualize that. So you just, you maybe whack them or something else to make your will known. But then as
people our age can still say that.
Yeah. But then when they get to be like a teenager, that's humiliating for them.
Yeah.
Because you're saying you're still acting like a child, therefore I'm gonna spank you.
Yeah. In the Daf Yomi, so we're learning Kedushin now, and the daf that we had, it was yesterday's daf or today's daf, I might be a little bit ahead, but is that when the child is under your control, then you can discipline him. But once he's past that stage, then any disciplining will be counterproductive, right? So we needed to have matured from hitting to talking, speaking, right? And certainly when once the children reach the teenage years, Oh boy, those are some tough years. When the kids reach the teenage years, right? Then as a parent, you go into sales mode, right? You can try to convince them, but anything that you try to impose upon them ends up meeting quite a bit of resistance, and often is counterproductive. Okay, so with that in mind, let's hear the different tone of Haazinu than what we've had, right? We had Parsha Ki Tavo, which was the Tochacha, right? This will happen, that will happen, this will happen, that will happen. Let's hear Haazinu a little bit. Haazinu Hashamayim, give ear, O heavens, va'adabeira, I will speak. V'tishma aretz, and the earth will hear, the land will hear, imrei fi, the words of my mouth. Now, you see the way it's written in the Chumash, right? This is the way that actually it's written in the Torah. On page 1100, I'm sorry. Page 1100 is where Haazinu begins. And this way that it's written in the Chumash, with these columns, is the way that it's actually written in the Torah itself. And we find a number of places when it's a shira, when it's a song, then it's written in prose like this, right? Az Yashir, right? By the splitting of the sea and the song that Moshe and then Miriam led the men and the women afterwards. That's also in the Torah. It's written in this manner, in these columns, as opposed to just a full paragraph. Yarof kamatar likhi. Tizal katal imrati. May my teaching drop like the rain, my utterance flow like the dew. Kesirim ale desha, like storm winds upon vegetation, raindrops upon blades of grass. Right? We have the parable of the water. Right? Water comes down, the rain comes down, and that allows growth to take place. Kishem Hashem ekra, when I call out the name of Hashem, Havu Godel Leilokeinu, ascribe greatness to our God. Hatsur, the rock, perfect is his work. Tamim Palo, Kichol Drachav Mishpat, all of his paths are just. Kel Emunah, the Ein Avel, a God of faith without any iniquity. Tzaddik v'yashar hu. He is tzaddik, he is righteous, and yashar, and he is straight. This is, right, if it sounds familiar, so at a funeral, we do what's called tziduk hadin, accepting the righteousness of God's judgment. Right? A blessing that's made at a funeral is Baruch Dayan Ha'emet, that he is the true judge. And then a number of verses that we say, and amongst them, Hatsur Tamim Pa'alo. Right? It's interesting. Right? Hatsur, the rock. Tamim Pa'alo. A rock has tremendous strength, but it's never perfectly smooth. Right? So the way that we are going to be perceiving the justice, the judgment of God, is it's never going to be perfectly smooth, right? The Chavetz Chaim has two beautiful mashalim, parables, that I'll share with you soon. Shichet lo. Shichet lo banav mumam. If there's any corruption, lo, it's not his, right? You do anything, right? You do a mitzvah, are you helping God? You do an aveira, are you hurting God? No. Banav mumam. It is the children where the blemish is found. Dor ikesh upetaltol, this twisted generation. Hala Hashem tigmalu zot. Is this what you're doing to Hashem? Am navav lo chacham, right? You unwise people. Halahu avicha. He is your father, kanecha, the one who created you. Hu ascha, v'yichoneneka, created you, formed you. This is not, if you do this, this and this will happen. This is, hey, open your eyes. See what we have over here. Right? On Chovos Halvavos, Monday nights, 5:45. Right? We're doing the Shar HaBechina, the 5th chapter of Shar HaBechina, which was so long and full, right? About opening your eyes to see the wonders of Hashem all around us, whether it's in the physical world, the spiritual world, the society, and it's just over and over and over. Zechor Yemot Olam. Remember the days of old. Binu Shno Dor Vador. Look back over the generations. Sha'al Avicha, page 1102. Ask your father, V'yagedcha, he'll tell you. Zekeinecha v'yomulach, and they'll tell you. Right? One of the things we had in Chovos Halvavos is that we see all the miracles that God did in the changing of nature that the Torah tells us all about. And you might say, hey, that's great, but I didn't see any of that. Right? Where do we see the wonders now, today? And he says,
That could be why also Hashem changed the paradigm on the rock, is because people got complacent and thought that was kind of just normal. And so then this new wonder of speaking.
okay, nice. So we shouldn't be complacent. Yeah. But the Chovos Halvavos says that you want to see the miracles, things equal to the miracles of Egypt, of the plagues and the splitting of the sea. You want to see its parallel today? Look at us. Look at the Jewish people. Here we are. And he's writing this in the 11th century. We're saying this now with the state of Israel, with a return, right? A crazy return to the homeland. And the desert blooming. We're saying it now with the prophecies having been at least starting to be fulfilled before our eyes. The Kadesh Nifutzotenu, gathering the exiles from the four corners of the earth. You go to a cafe in Tel Aviv, in Yerushalayim, right? And they're serving you Turkish tea, right, from a Moroccan waiter. The person sitting next to you, right, is just in from South Africa, and you have an Ethiopian pilot on the table next to you, along with a Sabra, a sixth generation Israeli, on the table behind you, and they're talking French on that table, and Spanish on that table, and English on that table, right? The Kabesh Lidachenu.
It feels like Irvine being there. So many languages.
Yeah.
You barely hear Hebrew.
The Kabesh Lidachenu. Gather our scattered ones. May Arba Kanfot Haaretz, from the four corners of the land, right? And with all that, they're speaking biblical Hebrew, right? It's not actually biblical Hebrew, but modern Hebrew is 98%, 95%. Granted, there's no radio or televizia, right? Or informatia, right? Or bira, all these things. But basically, we have revived an ancient language for an ancient people in our ancient homeland. That, he says, is the miracle we see today that rivals, if not outperforms, those that took place in Mitzrayim. So open your eyes, see all of this. When the Supreme One gave the nations their inheritance, when he separated the children of men, he set the borders of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. Ki chelek Hashem amo. Hashem's portion is his people. Yaakov chevel nachalato. Yaakov, Jacob, is the measure of his inheritance. Actually, I think the Nefesh HaChaim, chevel nachalato, like a rope, right? Meaning, if you're in a gym and There's a rope hanging from the ceiling. You shake the rope on the bottom, what happens? Goes up, and then the motion comes back down again, right? So we have an effect on the heavens. We are Hashem's portion. We are Hashem's inheritance. And therefore, he's not going to just let us go. He's not going to just let us go. But realize, right? He discovered him in a desert land, in desolation, a howling wilderness, right? The desert land over there in the Midbar, in Egypt, in the Midbar. He encircled him, granted him discernment, preserved him like the pupil of his eye. He was like an eagle arousing its nest, hovering over its young, spreading its wings, taking them, carrying them on its pinions, right? Al kanfei nisharim, right? On the wings of eagles, right? A street, a very common name of a street. I know in Yerushalayim you have it on the way to Givat Shaul. You have Rechov Kanfei Nisharim, right? There's a street of a Kanfei Nisharim on the wings of eagles. Right? And many towns will have a Rechov Kanfei Nisharim. Our whole return to Israel is on Kanfei Nisharim. I think it was from Yemen. It was Yemen that when the planes landed in the desert to bring them to Israel, right? They had never seen this before, right? They thought this was the Kanfei Nisharim, and they were probably right. We take it for granted, but these are the Kanfei Nisharim that are bringing the planes, the jets that are bringing. And it got cold on the plane. They started making fires on the plane to warm up. They were told that's not such a good idea, right? Yeah, these eagles don't do well with fire on board, right? That's not the best way to go. Hashem alone guided them, and no other power was with them. He would make him ride on the heights of the land, gave him to eat the ripe fruits of my fields, suckle him with honey from a stone, right? That's the water from a stone, our sustenance. Oil from a flinty rock, butter of cattle and milk of sheep with fats of lambs, rams born in Bashan, he-goats with wheat as fat as kidneys, as you would drink blood of grapes like delicious wine. But Jerusalem became fat. Vayashman Yeshurun vayivat. Right? So this is not this and this. This is open your eyes. Take stock. And we look at our generation, certainly, right? Fire and brimstone is not what moves people, right? It is a recognition. It is a realization. It is a reckoning of who we are, how we got here, of what we have in life, and how we should be responding to all of that.
There's one, he set the borders of his people according to the number of the children of Israel. That I'm not, that's vague to me.
Yeah. If you notice, unlike we've had before, these are the psukim and these are the Rashis. Okay, so we'll have to, you have to go through to see, each thing was referring to. I want to deal more on a global level. We'll take a look at that afterwards. We'll see exactly what Rashi says on that, right? And there'll be many, but this is very, very cryptic and opens itself up to much interpretation. I want to share with you two teachings of the Chafetz Chaim, both of them with a bit of a mashal, of a parable. Right, going back to Pasuk Dalet, verse 4 on page 1100. Hatzur tamim pa'alo kichol drachav mishpat. All of his paths are justice. Right? We sometimes see something and it doesn't seem to be just. Right? It seems to be cruel. Chafetz Chaim gives a parable, a mashal, of a king who had a son, a dear son, an only son, that he doted over, that he cared for. And suddenly this son became ill. And the king is calling in the best doctors, and they can't figure it out. And the child is getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And finally, this doctor comes and says, I think he has a very severe allergy to, let's say, animal fat. Right? He can't have any meat. Music to your ears, Linda, right? That's what you want to hear, right? He can't have any meat. Vegans, right? He can't have any meat. So they put him on a very strict diet, and he's getting better, he's getting better, he's getting better, and over time he's back to himself. And the king is constantly watching, supervising, making sure that this diet is adhered to as well as it possibly 100%. The king needed to travel at one point. So he instructed his servants, make sure, guard the kitchen. He wants that hot dog. He wants that hamburger. He wants the ribs. Make sure he does not have any. And they assured the king, don't worry, we're on it. The king goes traveling, and then the message comes to him, your son is very ill. Comes rushing back, and he had partaken of some of that. And once again, it's a whole bout, and they manage. And he had been warned by that doctor that if he'll go back to eating that, it could be fatal. And that doctor was called again, and they were able to get him back on his feet. A few months later, the king's having a big banquet with all of these delicious foods being served. And he's serving, everyone's being served so graciously, so kindly so generously at this banquet. And then in walks the king's own son. And these are people coming from a foreign land. They don't know any of the history. And they see the king is serving everyone so generously, so kindly, so benevolently. His son walks in. He starts to scream, get out! Get out! Get out! Kid doesn't move at first. Get out! Kid doesn't move. He grabs and he starts chasing after him. Get out! Everyone thinks, my gosh, what a cruel king. What a cruel father. Haazinu, Malkeinu, our father, our king. This is such a cruel father, such a cruel king. But they don't realize that this harshness is what is keeping that child alive. Had he taken something and put it into his mouth when he was there, then it could have been fatal. Hatsur tamim pa'alo, kichol drachav mishpat, kel emunah ve'ein avel tzadik v'yashar hu. The rock, perfect art is his work, all his paths are just. A God of faith without iniquity, righteous and fair is he. If you don't know the backstory, then it's very easy to look at something and say, oh, that's being so cruel. But that's what we often discuss. We have our very, very limited view. Those guests who came in, they don't know the backstory. They view it as cruelty, but in fact, it was an act of kindness and benevolence. Janet?
It's true. Like when you hear about Cook's Corner and people who...
Cook's Corner.
That was the mass shooting in Tribuco. And that diner, and some people were just out for that spaghetti night and had no relation to the shooter.
Yeah.
And and I said, oh Hashem, please. And
yeah, Yeah, yeah. And our emunah, our faith tells us that there is nothing, my bechira, my free will, stops at your nose, which means that in all of these, and I always get a lot of pushback on this, in all of these mass tragedies, the shooting at the concert in Vegas, I mean, unfortunately, we have many, 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 many such instances. But it's not random. It's not random. And whoever's time was up, they were there at that moment. And the question is always asked, well, if that was their time and every person has free will, so you're telling me that if at the last moment the shooter decided, I'm not going to do this, would 9 people in McDonald's all have had simultaneous choking on a Big Mac? And all of a sudden 9 people would have died in McDonald's? Right? It's hard to make that argument, especially because we do hear about mass shootings and 9 people getting killed in McDonald's, but we don't never hear about simultaneous Big Mac chokings, right, taking place at McDonald's. But the understanding for that is that, as the Rambam says, we can't understand this. But one of the great paradoxes is the fact that we have free will and God has yediyah, and God has knowledge. Even though to our mind, to our understanding, yediyah precludes bechira. If God knows exactly what's going to happen, then I don't truly have free will. The Rambam asks the question, doesn't really answer it, at least apparently doesn't answer it. The Raibid, one of the other commentators on the Rambam, says, Labriut, says that the Rambam did not act wise in this matter. Why bring up a question if you're not going to give an answer? And there are those that say the reason the Rambam did bring up the question and not give an answer is to let us know no one should come along afterwards and say, I've got a great kasha, a great difficulty with Judaism. And I'll tell you, if the Rambam had this question, he also would have rejected this religion. So the Rambam wrote the question, didn't give the answer, and let us know we can have paradoxes, we can have quandaries. I'm still the Rambam. Nothing has changed because of that. And some explain that, and the example I give very often is that actually I have a time machine. And I was here last week. Last week I flew to now and I took some notes. And I wrote down, it says right here, Leah will be back from her trip to Israel, will be sitting on my left, wearing a pink jacket. Janet will be wearing a white hat and a aqua blue top. All right. Esther in a white denim jacket, etc., etc. I know exactly. I've got it all written down over here. I'll show you afterwards. It's all written down over here. Yeah. Now, everyone had their absolute free will as to what sweat jacket, blouse to wear. Right? Everyone had absolute free will. I just not bound by time. I zoomed ahead and saw and knew what would happen. So once again, coming to McDonald's, yes, a person has free will, and God will have the right people there if their time has come. Why does their time need to come through that? God only knows, right? But the question, but if a person has free will, the person could have decided not to do that. Yeah, but God will know if what the person's going to decide. And in those situations, he knew that he would decide to go forward with it. So only those whose time had come were there for that.
But one could say then, if Hashem knows, um, from the aspect of Rahmanas, for something so traumatic as that, like to the children or bystanders, or wouldn't, from that aspect, wouldn't he try and stop it and make a different type of end?
Exactly.
Time has come?
Again, why it will be through that means for those individuals and for those who will witness it and experience it, right? That is those concentric circles, that everything that happens, right? One of the questions that's asked, how does my davening for someone help that person? I understand that person davens. How does my davening for someone else have any effect? And understanding is there are concentric circles, meaning that the person affected the most is that person, and then the immediate family, and then keep drawing concentric circles further and further out. The more people we have involved, the din, the judgment, needs to fit for everyone involved. And therefore, by getting more people involved in praying, our hope is that by involving all these people, and they're not meant to go through the pain of things going poorly, so that will give more time, and then perhaps there could be enough merits, whatever it might be, to change. That everyone who's affected, is meant to be affected to the degree that they are affected. And that really is what Rosh Hashanah is about. Rosh Hashanah is accepting the Malchut Shamayim, the kingdom of heaven. It's accepting that God is a melech. God is the king who's decreeing what should be happening, what should not be happening. Very often, it makes no sense to us whatsoever. No sense whatsoever. But as Rabbi Sachs explains, I've mentioned this many times, that when Hashem appeared to Moshe to send him to go to Egypt to take the children of Israel, Yetziat Mitzrayim, the exodus from Egypt, and Moshe finally agrees, says, "Fine, I'll go to the Bnei Yisrael. What should I say is your name? How should I present you to them?" And Hashem said, "Eheyeh Asher Eheyeh. I will be that which I will be." And many, many different explanations. Sachs breaks it down to, I think, just the most potent punch to it. You're not going to be able to predict me. You're going to be sure, there's no way God would ever allow fill in the blank. And you're going to get it wrong. Many, many, many times you're going to get it wrong. Eheyeh asher eheyeh. I will be that which I will be. You will not be able to predict me. And Rosh Hashanah is accepting Hashem as the Melech, as the King, that we're here in God's world, in God's loving embrace, even though we often don't see it as loving and don't understand, don't see the love in it. Chavetz Chaim gives another parable. He gives a parable, or tells a story, I should rather say, right, of a person who lived his life in this world, and then time came to go up to heavens, and at that point, the judgment was, you were very, very stingy. You were very, very, whatever it might be, right? And the person, as we believe happens at times, something called Gilgul Nishamot, the person has to come back to this world for unfinished business, as we call it. And the Midat Hadin, the judgment, the attribute of judgment, says the person must be given the same exact situations, the same scenarios, and therefore the same challenges as he was given the first time, and let him do it right this time. Otherwise, it's not a correction. And the person begs, no, please, make it easier for me. Let me not have that wealth that I had, which led me to be haughty and to not be willing to share with others. Please let me not have that wealth. And Midas Hadin, the attribute of judgment, said it's got to be the same situation. The Midat Harachamim, the attribute of compassion, says, let's make it easier for him. And the Midat Harachamim wins. And with God's compassion, with the heavenly court's compassion, he comes back, or she comes back to this world and can't get a job. Can't, just barely skims along. And the person says, God, right? What was the famous fiddler on the roof? Would it upset some great celestial plan if I was a wealthy man, right? And without realizing that this situation that you are in now, the trying, difficult situation, is the situation that you begged, please have compassion on me and give me the very situation that you're in now. And it was through compassion that they agreed that you'd be in this situation. So you would not have that same temptation and that same haughtiness and that same situation which can so easily lead to haughtiness.
It also showed that.
Right. So that is the idea of this Malchut Shamayim, of this kingdom of heaven, of recognizing just how little we know of the whole story, of the whole picture, and accepting that. And that's why our tefillah on Rosh Hashanah does not deal with, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. Our tefillah is only based on that the world should recognize. The world should recognize you, Hashem. We should accept you, Hashem, as the Melech. The world should recognize you as the Melech. And we should reach that point in time where everything becomes clear. Yes, John.
Also, in that particular case, it's interesting what the person chose, because it puts them in the position of being the recipient of that which he did not give in the previous.
Yeah.
And then he finally figures out, sees what it was like to not.
How it feels on the other side. Yeah. Someone once mentioned to me, I was at class or was at a rabbinic, but it's such a good practice. When you're faced with a situation, someone sitting across from you, try to put yourself into that person's shoes, and how would you want to be treated in that situation? And then try your best to treat that person in that manner, right? And like Janet said, in the scenario that Chofetz Chaim painted, the person got to experience how it feels on the other side. Yeah. Okay, my friends, we will call it over here. I wish you all a Lashana Tova, a wonderful year up ahead of bracha, of growth, of continued learning together. We could say hello to people who are here, those who are online.
Shana Tova.
Tova. Good. Okay. And next week we'll have regular class. Yeah, next week we'll have regular class. I don't see why not. Yeah. Regular class next week. The week after Yom Kippur is on Monday, right? Are we good for Tuesday? We'll talk next week and decide. Okay. Sorry? I hope you'll eat before Tuesday morning. Otherwise, Esther's going to have to bring a real lot of pastries along with the Parsha that Tuesday. People haven't broken their fast yet.
Because that's getting closer to Bezot. Remember, I always say Bezot doesn't have its own Shabbat, Habrachas, and we could really fun.